Hello, everybody. Hi. So, to everyone joining, please comment your name and what country you're joining from. Okay, so just going to start now. So, welcome everybody to day 3 of the Teens in AI Inspiration Week. My name is Hannah, and I will be your moderator for today. So Inspiration Week is a key part of our International Women's Day campaign. This week is centered around International Day of Women and Girls in Science, reinforcing the urgent need to close the gender gap in STEM. Inspired by UNESCO's call to action, we are highlighting the crucial role of women in scientific innovation and tackling the importance of inclusive media representation to challenge stereotypes. By showcasing diverse role models and real opportunities in STEM, we aim to empower more young women and girls to see themselves as scientists, engineers, and innovatives of the future. First, a huge thank you to our incredible corporate partners, Sage Foundation, and Red Hat, for their support on this making this event possible. Here to inspire us about improving public health, I would like to welcome our speaker for today's session, Dr. Becki Green. Dr. Becki is a principal scientist at the UK Health Security Agency. She is passionate about improving public health as well as increasing diversity in the health sciences field. Today, Becki's talk will touch on her career journey to date, tying together several pivotal moments across a variety of sectors in discovering her passion for data science and improving public health, as well as her experiences navigating weekly medical treatments and health challenges. If you have any questions for Becki, please put them in the Q&A chat. And we will be having a Q&A session at the end of her talk to answer any of your questions. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Becki. I'm just going to hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Hannah. I'm just going to share my screen. Give me one moment. Here we go. So thanks for the warm welcome, Hannah, in a very cold and grey London today. I'm feeling very inspired to speak with you all in a field that I imagine will be vastly different when you're my age. So the aim of my talk is to empower at least one of you on a career in public health in the context of data science and touch on my experiences and things I've learned along the way. And this is all in the context of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 3, Good Health and Wellbeing. So according to the United Nations, Sustainable Development Goal 3 is to ensure healthy lives and promote healthy well-being for all at all ages. So it's quite a big goal. There's 13 targets, and these include things like tackling communicable diseases, so diseases that kind of spread from person to person, such as tuberculosis and malaria, and reducing the mortality of chronic diseases such as heart disease and the cancers, as well as things like achieving universal health coverage and providing access to safe and effective medicines and vaccines for all. So ensuring healthy lives and promoting healthy living for all and at all ages is something I'm passionate about and something my career has been all about. I actually always wanted to be a doctor, predominantly to make a difference, but also I found it really interesting. And I studied sciences at school in preparation. But I had some health challenges growing up and was frequently admitted to hospital and missed about half of schooling. And this presented some really challenging but unique experiences. So I underwent numerous investigations and got to see some quite unique things. So I saw the hair-like structures in my airways that helped move mucus along. I saw those beating under a microscope. After telling them that I was interested in science and interested in medicine, they invited me back to the labs to watch these cilia beat. And at the time, we weren't really sure what was going on. It was considered to be an immune system abnormality that we weren't yet able to detect. But thankfully, we were able to work it out. I started on a treatment when I was 19, where I received antibodies from other people, and I can now do this myself at the end of a workday. And this has allowed me to do a lot of the things I had aspired to do and works really, really well. And through this, I saw firsthand how technology and clinical care advancements can have a huge impact, which can really even be felt at the individual level. So this had inspired me to want to be a doctor, but actually I realised I could contribute to health and well-being through other paths, and I went to university to study health sciences instead. So following my degrees, I came out fresh-faced, ready to kind of take on a career and expecting to just sort of roll into one. But this really wasn't the case, and I started off with a lot of rejections for both PhDs and jobs. And I was speaking to a family friend about this, and they said to me, "Oh, but you only need one yes." And this is such a simple quote, but so true, and something I still think about now. And I finally got that yes. I ended up working in kind of clinical research, finally got that clinical experience, got some experience working in kind of the community and in hospitals as well. But I was feeling kind of, I wanted to direct my own research. I was very interested in kind of data analytics. So I continued applying for PhDs throughout. So this took many years to get into. I felt a bit old when I started in comparison to the rest of my cohort, which on reflection, I wasn't. But I think this was actually a really good time for me. And being a bit older as well made me kind of more, I suppose, experienced in understanding how I learn and things like that. And I had the opportunity to work on these amazing studies where people are followed over time. And they have provided an immense understanding of health, such as highlighting how social inequalities can impact on health outcomes. And some of these studies have been followed since birth and through their life. And they're now older, so age-related diseases like late onset dementia can be studied. And this is really critical for diseases like dementia because there's a long period before someone is diagnosed where disease is accumulating. And this presents the opportunity to kind of intervene before the disease advances to the diagnostic stage. So in my PhD, I looked at a few of these studies to understand whether particular molecules in the blood, before you would typically see a diagnosis, are associated with early disease markers of dementia. And the aim of this was to identify potentially modifiable targets, for example, through drugs or lifestyle interventions. So the biological molecules in the blood that I looked at were called metabolites. And this was quite a growing field when I started my PhD, quite new in that space. So metabolites include things like glucose, cholesterol, and there's hundreds of thousands of these in the body. And you typically find that they're very correlated with each other because they may be part of the same biological process. So as you can imagine, looking at relationships of each individual one would not only be computationally intensive, but also really hard to extract any meaningful insight. So I used a particular type of statistical approach that finds patterns in the data and grouped these metabolites into densely connected groups. And then I looked to find the key drivers of these groups. So these are the ones I've kind of coloured as a brighter colour that were most highly connected, with the hypothesis that these were most likely to be driving associations and also would be a better target to intervene on. I then looked at their associations with markers of early dementia. So, for example, reductions in processing speed, so the speed at which your brain processes information, kind of memory scores, and the size of particular areas of the brain involved in memory. And I followed up with a particular statistical method that uses large-scale data to estimate causal relationships provided certain assumptions are met. So if that doesn't mean anything to you, don't worry, but this basically is because sometimes and quite often associations can occur because of particular biases, and this is better able to handle those. So we found some interesting initial findings, so particular kind of fatty molecules that were associated with the size of certain areas of the brain. And I think this field will be really exciting over the coming years. So I noticed a big change during my PhD with the increased sharing and availability of data and analytical code, the growth of statistical techniques, diversity among studies, computational power to kind of speed up analyses and cope with more large-scale data, And then also the creation of like global consortia so people can collaborate and advance research together, as well as online platforms such as Zoom and Teams being used to be able to communicate with each other more regularly. And the field when I finished my PhD, was actually very noticeably different from when I started. And I think my thesis was probably out of date only a few months following my PhD. So I never really thought that I'd be able to write a book on my work. I didn't really think about it until my final year. It felt a little bit overwhelming, but I got there and it was very rewarding. And I think that some of the tools in independent study that I picked up through missing school came in handy, but it was a learning experience for sure. And along the way, I picked up some skills that I think are a great foundation for a variety of jobs, and I've highlighted a few of those here. So you may have also heard of the Alan Turing Institute. So I went here to expand my horizons and learn from people applying similar methodologies in completely different contexts. So during my PhD, I read a couple of papers in my first year, and I thought, bingo, these are so useful. Got to the method section, and they were about tomatoes and cows. And from that, I realized that actually broadening your horizons and learning from other people that might not be directly in your field can really advance it. So going to the Turing Institute was probably one of the best decisions I made, but actually not due to those reasons. So I learned a lot about data ethics. I learned a lot about reproducible research, best practices working on large scale data science projects. So I got to work on a large COVID study, which was very relevant to my next steps. And I also found that a PhD was a very solo experience, whereas here I was learning to collaborate. So I will go quite quickly over this one. I absolutely loved it, but very much on an academic track. I did a postdoc at UCL where I worked on infections in relation to early dementia, as well as kind of risk factors of long COVID, so transitioning into this more kind of infectious diseases space. And this was actually using some similar studies to my PhD. And in fact, using the same blood samples, we had kind of antibody levels against a variety of infectious agents, such as one that causes chickenpox. And we defined kind of previous infection based on kind of validated cutoffs. And we looked at whether or not a previous infection with these particular kind of pathogens was associated with increased risk of dementia. Another kind of scope of these studies as well was what I worked on kind of in parallel to that. So for a subset that have consented, their study data has been linked with multiple health sources, so things such as hospital and GP and testing data. So we looked at associations of particular kind of risk factors with long COVID through that. So as you can see, the kind of variety and depth of data available these days offers a lot of opportunity for growth and research. And I think that this will continue to flourish. It can be a bit complicated though, because if you think of an example of when you might have filled in a survey versus what your GP might have of the same kind of variable, and similarly in hospital as well, these can all disagree with each other and it can get quite complicated. But really, really interesting kind of challenge to overcome. And I found that my kind of experience working in working in hospitals and also my own kind of personal experience was really useful as well when thinking about the kind of nuances of data. So I really liked the variety of postdoc experience. My team were brilliant, but I was feeling really, really lost. I'd kind of always been working towards that, but it didn't really feel quite right. I was desiring to feel closer to the public health frontline and interested in work directly influencing policy, but I was not sure how to get there and what was really available out there. So I wrote a list of what I liked doing, what I don't like doing, where my skills lie, what I want to develop further. And this then led me to the UK Health Security Agency. So I saw a post for a principal scientist working on the surveillance of respiratory viruses. And this was a bit of a U-turn from what looked like a pretty solid direction in the academic space. But I followed my gut and I just decided to go for it. And I'm really, really glad that I did. So here I manage a team of scientists working on kind of monitoring respiratory viruses such as the flu. And the aim is to understand what's currently happening with these viruses to inform public health response measures and detect any emerging trends. And we monitor these viruses in a variety of ways. So someone with flu, for example, can be infected but have no symptoms. Then you've got people who have symptoms, people who visit the GP, people who go to hospital, and people who sadly die. And it's impossible to kind of understand and monitor the burden of flu and address the kind of complex needs with just one system. And we use a wide variety of systems across a wide variety of these levels to build a picture of what's going on. So this can extend from things like kind of symptom surveys, kind of Google, laboratory testing, and hospital, and so on. And during winter, each week, leads from each of the individual kind of systems work together and pull this together into a report, which is then published on the Gov website, with a summary also fed into the data dashboard. And the data is vast and complex, so a wide kind of range of coding skills are used, so things like SQL, R, Python's data, as well as really, really extensive kind of data quality checks. So I manage a team of scientists working on more severe cases requiring hospital admission, and then also another based in the community, which primarily looks at symptoms, but is able to follow through to kind of medical use as well. So this is called Flu Survey. So Flu Survey is a crowdsourcing surveillance tool looking at respiratory virus symptoms in the community, and it's been running since 2009. What's amazing about Flu Survey is it's entirely contributed by the general public. So each week, volunteers from across the country report whether they're experiencing any symptoms through a quick survey. And this helps us spot trends early and understand the burden of viruses in our communities. And because it doesn't rely on people taking a test or visiting kind of the GP or a hospital, it highlights trends that we wouldn't really see through other health systems. And using this data, we look at trends in specific combinations of symptoms, such as those that kind of indicative of flu-like illnesses. We analyse this and we produce reports to understand and inform the burden of illness in the community. And this is all very fast-paced because it's typically on weekly data from Monday to Sunday. All of these analyses, all of these data quality checks happen. We work with a variety of teams, and then the report is published to the public on a Thursday afternoon. So it turns out being a doctor is not the only way to make a difference. I took a very sciencey route, but among my direct colleagues, there's someone at the same level who she did an archaeology degree, someone else who works a lot with kind of data. He did a classics degree. So I'm just going to say, follow what interests you. And when you can't, know that the skills that you pick up along the way will help you get there eventually. And there's really no right way to end up somewhere. So just have fun. And just to say thank you to all academic funders and collaborators, to my current colleagues at UKHSA, and then, of course, to all study participants and volunteers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Becki. That was a really, really interesting talk. I really enjoyed it. I'm just going to open the Q&A session now. So if anyone has any questions, please put them in the Q&A box for Becki to answer. So I'm just going to start off with the first question. Is it possible that using artificial intelligence to maintain health will create more health problems for people? Because as we know, the technologies we use today and in which is artificial intelligence embedded have a lot of radiation. Is this bad for health?
So that's a good question. Something that I'm probably not best placed to answer, but I can talk about my experiences at Turing Institute, where there were a few people kind of working on things in that sphere. So obviously you have to be very careful with kind of what algorithms are being used and what data feeds into those and whether it's representative. And I think that that will be something that is kind of has to be considered. So through my kind of experience at the Turing, there was a lot on kind of data ethics, thinking about what's going in, what's coming out, how to interpret it, what groups are potentially being excluded, and its impacts on both kind of society as from an environmental side of things, as well as kind of socially as well. So I think it presents many challenges, but there are incredible people working on these things, and there's also a book as well at the Turing Institute. There's a community-led book called The Turing Way, which I had the opportunity to work on. And there's a lot about that there as well, which is kind of free and open to look at. Would highly recommend looking at it. Great illustrations as well. Um, but yeah, a very complicated topic.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to the next question. What are some of the most exciting applications of machine learning or AI in public health?
Ooh, so during academia, that sphere of things, there are a lot of really cool kind of machine learning techniques being developed in terms of predicting individuals that might get dementia based on things like blood markers. And that field is really, really growing and really kind of very exciting. Um, in terms of my current role, I don't really use machine learning at all, but a lot of kind of data science techniques of working with large scale data. Um, yeah.
Thank you so much. Moving on to the next question. Is AI more accurate in diagnosing medical reports? Um, if not, oh, sorry. If it's not given relevant information, it might give another interpretation.
I mean, yes, anything that's going to be integrated into clinical practice will need to undergo many tests and be kind of replicated by a variety of different groups. Um, so it really kind of you do find some kind of papers out there. Well, at least during my PhD, I'm probably quite out of date with that now, but where there were varying, some things could look really exciting basically, and then followed up not so much. But for anything to kind of be integrated into clinical practice, it would need to be pretty robust. But sometimes it can just improve it a little bit and still be really valuable. Um, so there's that to consider as well.
Thank you so much. Moving on to the next question. Is it possible to insert a chip into organs to track the health and get data about issues through the platform?
I have no idea about that, if I'm completely honest. I'm not entirely sure. Um, I follow what particular platform? But I don't work with chips, I'm
I
afraid.
don't know, maybe kind of like I'm guessing maybe like I mean maybe possibly like a health app, you know how like people have smartwatches, kind of like
Ah, okay.
extending that to AI.
Yeah, I'm afraid that I'm not well placed to answer that, but I do love chips more generally, but the edible kind.
Okay, moving on to another question. What is one of the most memorable projects you have worked on and why?
Oh, that's such a good question. Um, just thinking about that.
Take your
Got,
time.
I've got one, to be honest, my first job was I found it so exciting. I think being having that kind of interaction with people. I mean, I find my current job incredibly exciting, but um being part of a wide team of people and kind of interacting with patients to kind of advance research, I found really, really cool and exciting. And particularly because there were multiple different kind of research studies ongoing at once. So basically, I was just deployed onto anyone that needed help, which meant that like every day was completely different. And every day is different when you work with the general public anyway, because you come across different people. And I found that really, really exciting.
Thank you so much. Moving on to another question. Could it be that someone might be suffering from symptoms like flu and be diagnosed as flu from the survey?
There's no diagnosis done through the survey. That would be through different routes, basically.
Thank you so much. Another question is, how do you think media representation of women in sciences influences young girls' interest in STEM?
I think it really massively does. I can only speak on behalf of myself there, but I think seeing role models out there that you can relate to um, is hugely important because otherwise I just don't feel inspired to go down that route because you don't feel like you're welcome. I even had that for sport growing up. I really liked football. And I think if I'd have kind of had more of a kind of role model in that football space, I would still be playing now. But um, I kind of didn't. So I think it's just very important to have that representation there and have those role models to look to and aspire to as well, and people to be available to kind of discuss how you can get there as well. I think it can feel a bit kind of a bit of a daunting path sometimes, but people like my door's always open. People are much more open, I think, than it feels like from afar.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I guess it kind of highlights the importance of like events like this, to open the doors and like get people interested and have that like representation.
100%. And even in terms of things like figures in books and like textbooks, online books, teaching materials, um, it's important through a variety of different means, basically. Yeah. And this event has been amazing.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to another question now. Um, I mean, this is quite similar to one of the other questions. What has been one of your most interesting experiences within your career?
I would say now bringing it back to my current role, I think working on something where that you can see the impact really, really quickly. You can see the output super quickly. This report that's published on a Thursday, you're working so hard at the start of the week to quality assure and run analyses and things like that. And then seeing it out there and seeing people kind of comment on it and it being used to kind of inform on public health response measures. I find that so interesting and so kind of invigorating as well. And definitely was what I think I was trying, kind of searching for a little bit in academia. Um, so yeah, I find that really interesting. And just every day's a school day. Like I learn so much every single day. You can really think that you've like got a to-do list and this is exactly how it's going to go out, but it's quite a kind of unpredictable space in that like there's a lot of different things that you can be asked to do and things just kind of inevitably crop up. And I think that's really kind of exciting and interesting to me.
Thank you so much. Just last couple questions as we are almost at half past. Um, did your past experiences help you shape, I'm sorry, let me start again. Did your past experiences help shape you become the person you are today and your profession?
I think so. Yeah. I think it when you experience how challenges you kind of understand a bit more about yourself, maybe, in that context of like listening to your body and kind of what drives you and what motivates you, because you have to sort of conserve your energy and work kind of towards that. Um, but also kind of inspired me to want to give back. There were people that I interacted with when I was in hospital and things like that that I still remember to this date. And they will have no idea that I would still remember them, but I really, really do. And to have that kind of level of impact on someone is incredible. Um, but yeah, and also just, I suppose, not being able to do things for quite some time. When you can do them, they feel really exciting. It feels really, you just feel really lucky. So there's that as well.
Thank you so much. I'm just gonna have one last question as we are almost at half past. What would your advice be to someone finding it hard to choose their future profession?
I would say don't worry about it too much because careers last a long time and going through a different route is completely fine because you'll pick up really cool things along the way. If everyone came from the same direction, then it would be quite a boring and not a super kind of innovative space. So don't worry about it. Follow your heart, see what happens. Sometimes things um, just happen, and then you kind of work with that. So don't worry about it too much. Have fun, meet some meet some good people along the way and just learn as much as you can, really.
Thank you so much, Becky. I'm going to close the Q&A session now. Sarah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here, for your talk and your dedication for the public health sector. I hope that our viewers feel empowered and inspired to learn more about this topic. Once again, I want to deeply appreciate our partners, Sage Foundation, and Red Hat. Thank you so much for making this event possible. And thank you so much for our viewers for returning. Inspiration Week is not over yet. Please join us again tomorrow for some more inspiring talks. But yeah, thank you so much for everyone for being here.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.